In this video, we'll discuss biosynthesis of the thyroid hormones. A part of that we have discussed in iodine metabolism. Briefly reviewing that, iodine uptake is first critical step in the synthesis of thyroid hormone. Iodine deficiency is the most common cause of preventable mental retardation. How iodide is transported. Iodide is actively transported into the thyroid gland by sodium iodine transporters, which are at the basolateral or basal surface of the follicular cell. Sodium iodide transporter maintains a 30 times more concentration of iodine in the cell compared to the blood. There are two types of receptors on the basolateral surface of the follicular cell: sodium iodine transporters and TSH receptors. TSH stimulates, and hypophysectomy greatly diminishes the activity of iodide pump in thyroid cells. What happens next inside the cell? When iodine enters the follicular cells, iodine then moves towards the apical surface of the cell, where there are peroxidase and hydrogen peroxide enzymes, and at the apical surface there is pendrin receptors. So iodide is oxidized to iodine by thyroid peroxidase, and then pendrin receptors, which are at the apical surface, they extrude iodine into the lumen of the follicle to combine with the tyrosine molecule. Thyroglobulin and tyrosine are present inside the follicular lumen attached to each other. Then there is iodination of the tyrosine. So that iodine attaches with the tyrosine molecule. Where does it attaches to the tyrosine molecule? Iodine binds to position 3 of the tyrosine to form monoiodotyrosine. It attaches to the position 5 of tyrosine to form dihydrotyrosine, and then the third iodine attaches to the 3 position of tyrosine to form T3 or triiodotyrosine. So T3 is 3,5,3, where the iodine is attached, or one monoiodotyrosine attaches with one dihydrotyrosine to form triiodotyrosine, or 2 dihydrotyrosine, or T4. Thyroid peroxidase is responsible for oxidation of iodide to iodine. Number 2, it's responsible for iodination of the tyrosine. Iodination of the tyrosine occur in the follicle, and oxidation occur in follicular cells. Responsible for formation of T3 and T4 by coupling. So thyroid peroxidase is responsible for coupling of monoiodotyrosine to MIT to DIT, dihydrotyrosine, to form T3. And thyroid peroxidase also combines 2 dihydrotyrosine molecules to form T4. So what's the difference between T3 and RT3 or reverse T3? RT3 structure is 5-3-5, where iodine is attached to the tyrosine instead of 3-5-3 position where it's attached in T3. RT3 is an inactive form of T3, and it occupies the site of T3. When T3 decreases, RT3 rises. Which drug inhibits the tyrosine binding to iodine? Iodine binding to tyrosine is blocked by anti-thyroid drugs such as thiouracil. And then what happens to this complex of thyroglobulin, tyrosine and iodine? How thyroglobulin is detached from the hormone? This thyroglobulin, tyrosine, iodine complex goes back into the follicular cells and enters the lysosome. And what happens in the lysosome? In the lysosome, peptide bond between iodinated residue and thyroglobulin are broken by protease, and thyroid hormones are liberated, and thyroglobulin is digested by the follicular cell. So what happens to the uncoupled monoiodotyrosine and dihydrotyrosine? Monoiodotyrosine and dihydrotyrosine are deiodinized by dehydrogenase enzyme for iodine to be recycled. This is how iodine is recycled. Then T4 and T3 are deiodinated in the liver and kidney. Mainly T4 and T3 are conjugated to form sulfate and glucuronide. They enter bile and pass into the intestine. Other factors that influence hormone synthesis are growth factor produced locally, insulin-like growth factor, epidermal growth factor, endothelins, and cytokine. What's the mechanism of action of thyroxine? It's the T3 which is the active physiologic form, and T4 is converted to T3 in the cytoplasm. How is it converted to T3? By the enzyme deiodinase. T4 is converted to T3, and then T3 enters the nucleus by passive diffusion and binds to non-histone proteins in the DNA to increase the synthesis of mRNA. Hormone also acts on mitochondria.